Imagine pumping millions of gallons of water deep underground while your entire country sits in one of the driest deserts on Earth. Sounds backwards, right? But that's exactly what Saudi Arabia's been doing, and the scale of this operation is absolutely wild. There are whispers that this massive project might be genius, or it could be setting up the kingdom for a future disaster. Why would anyone bury water when every drop is desperately needed on the surface? The answer involves ancient lakes, invisible rivers, and an engineering feat that puts nature itself to shame. If you're curious about mega projects and the hidden systems keeping entire nations alive, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you want to see more content like this, and let me know in the comments whether you think this is brilliant engineering or a risky gamble. Saudi Arabia is one of the driest places on the planet. Zero natural rivers, zero lakes, just endless sand and scorching heat. The country gets an average of only 4 inches of rain per year in many regions, which is almost nothing compared to what most countries experience. Yet somehow, this desert nation has built one of the longest water transport systems ever created by humans. We're talking about a network that rivals the Nile River itself. Recent reports from 2024 and 2025 have people questioning whether this whole setup is sustainable long-term. There's growing concern that Saudi might be delaying an inevitable crisis rather than solving it. The population is exploding, expected to jump from 35 million to over 40 million by 2030. And everyone's wondering where all that extra water will come from. The truth is, Saudi's playing a high-stakes game with nature, and the clock is ticking. But here's where it gets interesting. The secret to their survival isn't just what's above ground. Since 2021, Saudi Arabia has constructed a staggering 522 dams across the country. Now, you might be thinking that's impressive, but here's the catch most people don't realize. These dams aren't like the ones you see in other countries. They're specifically designed to capture flash floods and rare rainfall events that happen in wadis, which are basically dry riverbeds that suddenly come alive when it rains. When those rare downpours hit, they can be so intense that they supply entire cities with water. The Holly Dam alone has a capacity of around 250 million cubic meters, Celsius, making it the second largest in the country. Over in the Mecca region, there are 60 dams working together with a combined storage capacity of 232 billion gallons. That's an insane amount of water sitting there, waiting. But here's the problem. Saudi Arabia is so brutally hot that if this water stayed on the surface, it would evaporate within hours. Temperatures regularly hit 122 degrees Celsius during summer, turning any exposed water into vapor almost instantly. That's why these dams are critical. They protect the water from disappearing into thin air. But dams are just the backup plan. The real story is what's been hiding beneath the sand for thousands of years. If you're enjoying this so far, tap that like button real quick. And drop a comment letting me know. Did you have any idea Saudi had over 500 dams? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Underneath Saudi Arabia's desert sits something most people would never expect. Massive underground lakes holding approximately 26 trillion gallons of water. This isn't science fiction. It's ancient water from a time when the Arabian Peninsula was actually green, with rivers flowing and rain falling regularly. That was thousands, even millions of years ago. And that water has been trapped underground ever since. But here's the unsettling truth that nobody likes to talk about. Most of this water is what scientists call fossil water, meaning once it's pumped out, it's gone forever. It doesn't refill because Saudi Arabia doesn't get nearly enough rainfall to recharge these aquifers. Only about 739 billion gallons per year are considered renewable, and that's a tiny fraction compared to what the country actually uses. Recent studies from 2024 show that in some regions, groundwater extraction exceeds natural recharge by 100 times. Let that sink in. They're pulling water out 100 times faster than nature can replace it. Reports suggest that by 2008, at least 80% of the fossil water reserves had already been depleted, with an estimated 21 billion cubic meters being extracted every year. That happened in just one generation. Now, in 2025, people are quietly asking the question nobody wants to answer. What happens when it runs out? Some experts believe the remaining reserves could last a few more decades if consumption continues at current rates. But with the population booming and industrial demand increasing, that timeline could shrink fast. It's a ticking clock buried beneath the sand. And Saudi knows it. Faced with the reality of disappearing groundwater, Saudi engineers did something extraordinary. They built an invisible river, not a natural one, but a massive underground pipeline system stretching over 8,700 miles. To put that in perspective, that's longer than the Nile River, the longest natural river on Earth. This isn't just impressive, it's borderline insane. Why go underground? Because when temperatures hit 120 degrees, any water sitting on the surface would evaporate almost immediately. The old system, which covered about 78,200 miles of pipelines, was mostly above ground or shallowly buried, making it vulnerable to heat, contamination, and damage. The new system runs deep, creating an invisible river that protects the water while maintaining pressure and flow efficiency across vast distances. Building this wasn't easy. Engineers had to blast through the Hijaz Mountains using tunnel boring machines and controlled explosions. We're talking about dense granite and limestone that resisted every step of the way. Some of these pipes are over 6 feet wide, precisely laid to prevent leaks or collapse. Then there's the desert itself. Construction teams worked in conditions where summer heat regularly exceeded 120 degrees, forcing them to build during early morning hours or overnight. Add in shifting sand dunes, dust storms, and the occasional flash flood, and you've got one of the most challenging construction projects ever attempted. The result? A pipeline system that pumps water directly from the Red Sea and Persian Gulf to inland cities like Riyadh, Jeddah, and Mecca. But there's a major catch to all this. The water coming from the sea isn't drinkable, it's full of salt. And that's where the next part of the story gets even more extreme. You can't drink seawater, so how does Saudi Arabia turn millions of gallons of salt water into fresh, usable water every single day? The answer is desalination, and Saudi Arabia absolutely dominates this technology. The country operates 43 desalination plants as of 2024, more than almost any other nation. The crown jewel is the Ras Al Khair facility, which cost a staggering $7.2 billion to build. This plant alone produces 728 million liters of fresh water every single day, enough to serve 3.5 million people in Riyadh. It's recognized by Guinness World Records as the largest desalination plant on the planet. Saudi's second largest plant in Jubail consistently churns out around 211 million gallons daily. When you compare this to other nations, Saudi Arabia's progress is unmatched. Countries like Israel, Australia, and the UAE are making moves, but Saudi still leads the pack. But here's the controversy. Desalination is incredibly energy intensive. It uses massive amounts of electricity, most of which comes from burning oil. The process can cost anywhere from 3 to 10 times more than traditional water sources. That's a massive financial burden, even for an oil-rich nation. And then there's the environmental cost. Desalination produces brine, a highly concentrated saltwater byproduct that's toxic to marine life if not disposed of properly. Critics argue that pumping this brine back into the ocean harms ecosystems and that the entire process is unsustainable long-term. Supporters counter that for a country like Saudi Arabia, there's simply no other option. Growing concerns in 2024 and 2025 suggest that while desalination solves the immediate water crisis, it creates new environmental and economic challenges that might come back to haunt them. Before we move on, if you're finding this video helpful, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future deep dives like this. Also, let me know in the comments what you think about desalination. Is it worth the environmental cost, or should Saudi be looking at other solutions? Here's where Saudi Arabia's story takes a fascinating twist. While battling a water crisis, the kingdom announced one of the most ambitious environmental projects in history, planting 10 billion trees across the desert. Yes, you read that right, 10 billion trees in one of the driest places on Earth. The goal is to green 184 million acres of land, transforming vast stretches of desert into forests. As of 2024, over 151 million trees have already been planted, with 500,000 hectares of land rehabilitated. By 2030, the target is to have over 600 million trees in the ground, covering approximately 3.8 million hectares. The Saudi Green Initiative, as it's called, aims to combat desertification, reduce air pollution, and lower temperatures across the country. Studies suggest that widespread tree planting can reduce harmful airborne particles like PM 2.5 by up to 20%, which would massively improve air quality in cities. Temperature drops of around 4 degrees Celsius are also expected, which might not sound like much, but in a place where street temps hit 122 degrees Celsius, every degree counts. But here's the big question nobody seems to be answering. Where's all the water for these trees coming from? Trees need water to survive, especially in a desert climate. Rumors suggest that Saudi is using a mix of treated wastewater and desalinated water for irrigation, but the specifics remain unclear. Some critics argue this is an ambitious PR move that doesn't address the core issue of water scarcity. Others believe it's a necessary step toward long-term sustainability, even if it puts additional strain on already limited water resources. Cities like Neom are already incorporating green infrastructure into their designs, showing that Saudi is serious about this transformation. But whether it's realistic or just an expensive gamble remains to be seen. Despite all the progress, there's a growing sense that Saudi Arabia's water situation is more fragile than officials let on. Reports suggest that water demand is increasing faster than supply, putting enormous pressure on an already strained system. The population boom is a huge factor. With millions more people expected by 2030, the country will need significantly more water for drinking, sanitation, and industry. Agriculture alone consumes nearly 80% of Saudi's water, much of it going toward inefficient irrigation practices. Wastewater treatment is helping, with 99 facilities producing 1.3 billion gallons of treated water daily. That sounds impressive until you realize it's nowhere near enough to meet demand. Predictions show a 4% annual growth in treated water until 2050, but if the population grows faster, the gap widens. There are also whispers about potential water conflicts in the region as neighboring countries face similar shortages. Some experts worry that the entire system is built on borrowed time, relying too heavily on fossil water that can't be replaced and desalination plants that cost a fortune to run. The groundwater situation is particularly alarming. Studies from 2024 show that in northeastern Saudi Arabia, groundwater levels have been steadily declining over the past 15 years, with some recovery during wet periods, but the overall trend is downward. Extraction rates far exceed natural recharge, and without significant changes, the reserves could dry up within decades. That's not speculation, that's what the data is showing. Saudi Arabia's underground river system is both an engineering marvel and a high-stakes gamble. The country transformed itself from water poor to water engineered in just a few decades, building dams, pipelines, and desalination plants at a scale that's hard to comprehend. They've turned seawater into drinking water, captured flash floods in the desert, and are now attempting to green millions of acres of barren land. It's audacious, ambitious, and absolutely necessary for their survival. But the real test is still ahead. Can they maintain this system as fossil water reserves dwindle? Will desalination remain economically and environmentally viable as demand skyrockets? And what happens if the population continues to grow faster than they can secure new water sources? These are the questions that keep experts up at night. Saudi Arabia has proven that with enough money and determination, you can engineer solutions to almost any problem. But nature has limits, and eventually, those limits catch up. The underground river is a lifeline, but it's not infinite. The clock is ticking, and the world is watching to see if Saudi's water revolution is the blueprint for the future or a cautionary tale about pushing too hard against the desert. What do you think? Is this the future of water management, or are they just delaying the inevitable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you made it this far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating mega projects. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.